Dan Lanning audio. We played his thoughts on year one in the Big Ten.
I mean, there are it will always be weird for me growing up watching the Pac-12, and it's my team that's now in a new conference. The big games are very cool. When you play Michigan, when you play Ohio State.
You're at Penn State
When
this
you're
year.
at Penn State. Like, the Wisconsin game was fun. I know it was low scoring and ugly. Those ones matter. When you play the irrelevant teams in the Big Ten, it sucks. Playing Maryland is stupid.
Yeah.
Michigan State for the time being. I know there's the tie-in with Jonathan Smith.
Playing at Purdue.
Playing at Purdue
Dumb.
is dumb. There's a lot of bad teams in that conference that I don't care about.
Here was Lanning. He was asked about the elephant in the room. Hey, getting your ass kicked in the first half of the Rose Bowl. How'd that feel?
Ooh, tough, man. Tough. And I think the easy thing in those moments, especially afterwards, is like, let me make excuses of why. Right. But if you're a growth mindset guy, right, if you're wired like we are here, to me, it's like, how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? Right. You got to learn from that moment. Right. And as rough as it is. Now, on the same note, in the middle of the game, what am I saying? Hey, I remember Georgia-Alabama game earlier this year. It wasn't close, man. And those guys came back in the second half. And we certainly played a lot better in the second half than we did in the first. But I'm that guy that I want to fight until there's, no time left on the clock. So that's the mindset. When you leave that game, after the game's over with, you're like, okay, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? Ohio State is an unbelievable team, really well coached. Coach Day did an unbelievable job this year, but, they're going to have a ton of guys drafted. They had a lot of success. So we had a lot of guys go on to the next level. There are things that they did in that game that we didn't prepare our players well for, right? And that's the part. Like, can you take the medicine? Can you figure out what didn't go right? Right, but if you're wired the right way, right? We're watching Houston the other night, and you're watching, Coach Sampson's been coaching for a long time. That guy's deserving of a national championship. How hard he's worked, he's never touched it. It shows you how hard it is for it, to get. Like, so hard to get. But that, if you're motivated the right way, those moments, those are growth moments. That's a chance to say, okay, I'm going to go improve. Yeah. Ooh, tough, man.
Can I ask you?
I agree, Coach. I agree.
I was listening to this yesterday, and I was texting you some, like, if I heard something, I'd be like, oh, I think this could be good. In listening to that answer, one, I could be wrong. I don't know if he's talked about that game in another interview setting.
I don't think so, because he had the end of there was the interview right after the game, the press conference,
right.
But he has not really. The only other stuff he's done with media since are spring practice post stuff and signing day stuff, in which he just talked about the signing class.
So that was my first answer that I've heard from him talking about that.
The aftermath, the dust is settled.
Yeah.
Where's your head at on it?
And I like the perspective. I like kind of his mindset there. I know some people roll their eyes. And look, Dan Lanning is not that polarizing, but I think for the opposing fan bases in our market, there's a little bit of like, if he was, I'm wondering if, look, Oregon is a hated program by a lot of people, but
yeah,
I guess what I was wondering yesterday, because I like Dan Lanning, and I would, if I was betting futures on coaches, I would honestly bet Dan Lanning. I'm still stunned that they got beat the way they got beat. I guess from the Duck fan angle, he's been there 3 years, going on his fourth year.
Yep.
I don't really think there should be any, not that you don't get better or improve in your life, and he's still in his 30s. Like,
I think he's 37.
37 to 38. I think he's close to my age. It's not that you don't grow and learn
39
as you continue on. So he's almost 40.
Yep.
It's more like you're going to go into year 4 of this. And last year was really good until it wasn't. What are Duck fans' criticisms of him as a coach? Not a recruiter, not as a leader, not as an interview or speech, motivating type guy. We know what those are. What is the criticism of him as a coach for Duck fans? What is the thing that Duck fans are still like, you like all the other stuff, but is there anything about his coaching that you've heard Duck fans complain about or wonder aloud? I'm really genuinely curious about this, because some fan bases will tell you, big game Lanning, here he goes. And then they win the Big Ten, and that kind of goes away. But then they lose the Rose Bowl. So what is the Duck fan thought of Dan Lanning as a coach?
Look, this will sound like the epitome of I don't have a lot of complaints about him as a coach. I genuinely don't. No coach is perfect unless your name is Nick Saban. That's kind of a rare one-of-one example. He took over, won 10 games in year 1, he won 12 games in year 2, and he went 13-0 in year 3. He's recruiting at a high level as the program has ever recruited at. He just brought in the best recruiting class in terms of talent of player that the program has ever seen. He's on the brink of potentially signing 3 of the top 4 players in the country in the 2026 class in the next couple of weeks. Like, I don't have any complaints. It was a bad game. It was a bad day. Things snowballed on them. They played horrible in their biggest game of the year. They also beat Ohio State earlier that season and went 13-0 and beat Penn State and won the Big Ten championship. I look at that game more as a set of circumstances that just really went against them.
Well, because he says he didn't have his. I mean, I appreciate his honesty. Just I didn't have my team prepared. They had things that we weren't prepared for.
And also, I think, how do you prepare a team to go play a game against unquestionably the most talented team in the country? That I don't know if you'll ever see that level of talent in the current NIL portal era accumulated on one roster
There's a
again.
combination of things.
They brought all their guys back. They paid all their guys. They brought in the number 1 freshman in the country in Jeremiah Smith. They had a veteran quarterback. Like, every star aligned for them. For whatever reason, they couldn't find their stride throughout stretches of the regular season, and they looked a little clunky. And then what happens at the end of the year? You lose to Michigan in one of the most embarrassing losses in the history of that program. And it completely woke them up. They were a much different team after that. And oh, by the way, they had revenge on their mind because you beat them in the regular season. And then you have to sit around for a month not playing a game while they get a tune-up game at home against Tennessee.
He did talk about that, by the way. We won't play the clip. We told it, but he was like, the schedule.
It's ridiculous. They sat around for a month.
He did not blame the schedule.
No, he didn't. I'm blaming the schedule. I mean, I'm not. They would have lost to Ohio State either way. Ohio State was the better team. They could have won the game at Autzen Stadium easily if Will Howard slides with 1 second left or he doesn't drop a snap earlier in the game.
Sure.
Like, Ohio State was the more talented team last year. But if I'm basing my year 3 thought on him as a head coach of he didn't have the best team in the country, I'm not going to put him up to that standard. He has done an unbelievable job, and the program has never been headed in a better direction. And so, there's little things you could nitpick here or there. Sometimes he's too aggressive. I genuinely don't have a problem with it. I like coaches that are aggressive. He rolls the dice. He's emotional. His players love him. I got 0 complaints about him as a head coach.
We need to go to Steve Pfeiffer. I do want to play This Is the Last Cut, I promise. He was asked, Mike Vrabel was on this podcast and famously said he cut off his own ween to win a championship.
Cut off his ween.
Lanning was basically like, hey, to win a title, would you do that? What would it take to win a title?
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, right? I mean, I do have 3 kids. I'm not having any more. But that ring, what would you not do for that? I mean, that's a special feeling, a special moment.
What would you cut off for a ring?
Definitely a pinky toe. Definitely, some.
Would you cut off your middle finger?
Yeah, I don't use it. On my left hand.
What about your right ear? Entire right ear?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Ooh.
Why would you not?
No.
I mean, I'm not coaching.
If you were, as a player, would you not?
No.
I would cut off my right ear.
Cut off my right ear?
Prosthetic.
Yeah.
You could do a prosthetic ear.
It's a good question. I don't know if I
not
would.
vain. I don't feel like I'm like vain, like when it comes to like what do I look,
Yeah.
Do you really need your right ear?
I mean, you'll have a gash in the side of your head for the rest of
And
time.
it's
Just
a
a
great
hole.
and it's a great story.
Great story.
Would you do?
Now you kind of have me on board.
Like it's a great story. You're unique.
Would you cut off your entire foot for the ring?
Dude, there's so many advancements in science now. You can for sure do that.
I'd need to evaluate it first. I need to see the advancements. Foot strong.
You could just wear pants all the
Foot
time.
strong. I'm trying to think of all the things I still want to be able to do.
You could just wear pants.
Just wear pants all the time. It's advancements in science.
I'm not cutting off a foot to win a title. I'm sorry.
No, foot's
I'm
too
not
much.
built like that.
Foot too much is
Ears
and
too
ears
much.
too much.
Ears too much.
Finger or toe, I'm okay with. How much does it impact my golf swing is my first question.
I like my fingers, man. They've been with me my whole life. They've been loyal. They make me feel good. I don't want to lose my fingers. They don't deserve
For
that.
a Beaver natty, for a Beaver invite to a power conference, you wouldn't cut off a pinky toe?
Dude, Beaver fan hates when I talk about this. I wouldn't give anything up for a natty. A pinky toe, maybe?
Pinky toe is an easy one.
Because you don't really need it.
You don't
We're
need it. You'll be fine.
going to evolve and not have one in like 100 years anyway. But
you'll be fine.
I can't even move my pinky toe. Like, I'm trying to move it right now. It won't move.
I don't even know if it's there. I
Right.
can't even tell.
Yeah. I
ahead
think
and
I'd
take
still
that
stand okay.
Go take it. Take it away.
Would you cut a finger off for an Addy?
I would need to get with a golf coach to figure out how is my golf swing
You're
impacted.
not even a coach. You're
Yeah, I
not
know.
on the team.
But just to see one, I'd contemplate a finger.
it's insane.
Be kind of cool. Like, hey, what happened to your ring finger? What happened there? Well,
Swag, would you cut off a finger for the Kraken to win a title? No.
lifelong fandom.
I was afraid you were actually going to say I'd cut off a finger for you to be on the damn clock.
Cut off a finger for you to go to break right now.
Well, that's a good point. There's Dan Lanning. Good stuff. Podcast was fun to listen to, and we hadn't heard from him, and I like that he was willing to talk about some of the stuff that he talked about.